to Qom. Now see, it all changes here. With the others, he said, you can tell your scholars, your greater professors or whatever, to study these books in your own country. It's okay. But with Irfan, he says you have to send not only your scholars or professors, your genius, specialist experts. And they can't learn it themselves. You have to send them to Qom. It doesn't even say Najaf. It doesn't say any other city. Why does he specify Qom? What's the history of Qom and Irfan? These are very delicate matters that Imam is referring to. So, who have a strong basis in such matters, send them to Qom so that after several years with reliance upon Allah, with tawakkul upon Allah, with those people, they can become aware of the depth and thinner than hair delicateness of the stations of gnosis, ma'rifah. For without making such a journey, awareness of such knowledge is not feasible. Now, who is saying this? Someone who was a mujtahid in Irfan, in addition to being a mujtahid in fiqh. And not only was he a mujtahid in Irfan, but he was one in his 20s. Now, there are not many people like that. He mentions a name here. Imam says the works of Ibn Arabi. Now, at that time, the common trends of the ulama in Qom regarded him, Ibn Arabi, as a kafir. To be polite, some of them said he was a Sunni Muslim. But the common trends was that he was a kafir. Why did they think he was a kafir? Imam gives the answer in his other parts of other speeches he's given or works. Because those people haven't understood Irfan. They haven't studied Irfan. They haven't gone through the proper ustads. And therefore they think by just reading for themselves, they can understand it and then call people kafirs. So it's ignorance. Now someone may be a specialist in fiqh, maybe the most learned in fiqh, but that doesn't mean they are learned in other sciences by default. Sciences have to be studied. Now, it's not important whether he was a Muslim, as a Sunni Muslim or a Shia Muslim. That's not of any relevance here. Although Ayatollah Jawadi Amali, Ayatollah Hassanzadeh Amali, they've proved he was a Shia Muslim. They've gone through his works. They've proved it through historical reports, how people have distorted Ibn Arabi's works. There are works that he has mentioned the names of the 12 Imams, how he believes in them. They've taken these passages out of his works. They read one or two of the 700 works that he's done and they come to a wrong conclusion. Everywhere he said Hussein, they changed it to Hassan. Some parts they just deleted altogether. Some parts they even added. You have to read all his works to understand where he's coming from. And specialists have done that. But that's not important. Ibn Arabi was a Sufi. And that's important here. Why does Imam introduce a Sufi and Sufism as a means for the West to be invited to Islam? This is why I'm mentioning this letter, because this is an important point. To invite people to Islam in the West, the key, according to Imam, is Sufism. Now, inshallah, I'll be speaking about Sufism during the next 2 or 3 nights. And because it has been abused, it has been misunderstood, and this is something which is intrinsic. It's a layer of our religion. We have to practice this. We have to know this. As Ayatollah Hassanzadeh said, a community without Irfan is like a corpse without a spirit. Religion has layers. The Sharia is one layer. It's a superficial layer, but it's an essential superficial layer. Without it, without the Sharia, you can't grow through the deeper and esoteric realms of Islam. You have to pay attention to the Sharia. Now, I know in the West you may not have access. You may have many questions in relation to the halal and harams, but you don't have access. Today, that's not an excuse. I mean, I know in this community you do have access, and once a week, alhamdulillah, there are lessons and everything. But even if there was no one here, I'm telling everyone in this community, or whoever's listening, on this pulpit, it's the duty of people like me. You can easily email me, even if I'm in Iran. And even if I don't know the answer, I can go to your manager's office and ask. There's no excuse to fall short in relation to the Sharia. There may be personal questions, private questions. It's okay. It's part of me entering this this line of work. It's my pleasure, it's my duty, and there are many like me, English-speaking seminary students who are more than willing to help. Anyway, the Sharia, albeit a superficial realm and layer of Islam, it's essential. It's the letter of the law. But it shouldn't be taken as everything of Islam being confined to this realm of Islam. Islam is esoteric, it's infinite. Now, Sufism, we'll speak about that more and more. But Imam wants the West to be attracted to Islam through this line, not through the letter of the law. You can't attract non-Muslims to Islam through the letter of the law. It won't make sense to them. Even in theology, it's going to be difficult to attract them. Yeah, it's okay. Yes. It's difficult to attract them. Now, the works of Ibn Arabi, these are difficult works, even for the likes of me. No one is expecting the common layperson to go through Ibn Arabi's works. But seminary students can study these books and then simplify it for the common layperson. That's how the prophets would speak. No, it's okay. Yes.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجا. So, we have to discuss what is Sufism, who is the Sufi, is Sufism and the Sufi synonymous to Irfan and the Arif? If not, what are their differences? Are they the same or not? These have to be discussed, and inshallah that's what I'll be doing with Allah's help the next few nights. And there'll be many marginal points we'll discuss during this debate also. So, first one has to give a definition of what Sufism is, or what Irfan is. For now, let's use these terms as interchangeably. They're synonyms for now, although according to most scholars they are synonyms. Only Imam has one minor difference between Sufism and Irfan. He gives one or two small differences, but on the whole Sufism is Irfan and the Sufi is the Arif. But let's go slowly through this, go through the definitions, we'll go through the classifications, then we'll go through verses of the Quran, traditions from the Ahlul Bayt, where all this can be extrapolated from. Starting with the literal definition of Irfan. Irfan is what they call in English grammar, it's a gerund, and in Arabic they say master, and it means knowing or recognizing. That's the literal definition of Irfan. The technical definition we'll come to in a minute. This literal definition of Irfan, knowing or recognizing, has been used in the Quran. And it's a very subtle point actually in this verse of the Quran. And if we understand how the literal definition of Irfan is used in this verse of the Quran, you'll easily grasp what the technical definition of Irfan is. It's in chapter 12, verse 58. وَجَاءَ إِخْوَةُ يُوسُفَ فَدَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ. The brothers of Prophet Yusuf came and entered his presence, entered the presence of Yusuf alayhi salam. فَعَرَفَهُمْ. He, Yusuf alayhi salam, recognized them. عَرَفَهُمْ. Arafa comes from Irfan. He recognized them. وَهُمْ, and they, lahu, in relation to Yusuf, munkirun. They denied Yusuf. Now the important point is this. Yusuf alayhi salam is on the one side. The brothers are on the other side. Yusuf alayhi salam is seeing the brothers. The brothers are seeing Yusuf. They're both seeing one another. But when all this seeing is taking place, Yusuf alayhi salam recognizes the brothers. The brothers, however, whilst seeing Yusuf, don't recognize him. Now let's take this one level higher between Allah and creation. Allah is seeing creation. Creation, me and you, are seeing Allah. But Allah recognizes us. But we don't recognize Him whilst seeing Him. Yes. Chapter 215. فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Whichever way you turn, there is the face of Allah. Wajhullah, the attributes of Allah, or the essence of Allah, depending on different perspective interpretations. Wherever you turn, you are seeing Allah, but you're not aware of this seeing. You are denying Him, but you're seeing Him. You can't see other than Allah, but you don't recognize Allah. And that's what Irfan, that awareness of Allah, that's what Irfan is all about. And we have traditions where Arafa is used also. There are many of them, I'm sure you know them already. Now the technical definition of Irfan or Sufism, there are many scholars have given it, but one scholar I've chosen to give his definition is because he's a scholar of 400 years ago, which everyone, all scholars, be they fuqaha, be they amongst the mutakallimin, be they, the jurisprudence, the theologians, all scholars accept this figure, and that's Sheikh Baha'i of about 400 years ago or so. And he wants to give the definition of Irfan, and he uses the term, not Irfan, in those days they would just call it Tasawwuf, that Sufism, Tasawwuf. And when giving the definition of tasawwuf, he says it's a science. That's a very important point to understand, first of all. It's a science. Like all other sciences, it has principles. And like all other sciences, these principles have to be extrapolated from different resources. In medicine too, it's a science with principles. It's extrapolated from data, this, that, and the other. Just because we find an ignorant or a medic that has abused his powers or has abused his or her knowledge, it doesn't mean medicine is bad. Medicine is still in place. It's a science. It's holy. Just because a medic has gone, haywire and done wrong things, don't eliminate the science. Tasawwuf too. The Sharia also. These are sciences. He says that Tasawwuf Sufism is a science within which is discussed the essence of unity, that oneness of God, and Allah's names and Allah's attributes, in the sense that each of their manifestations, the manifestations of Allah's names and attributes, leads one to the divine essence. Now, that's just a translation. I'll explain in simple terms what that means in a minute. That's the theoretical aspect of Sufism. And then in the same definition, a few lines later, he says, and also the manner by which the people of Allah, Ahlullah, the manner by which the people of Allah return towards Allah, and the mechanism of wayfaring, suluk, and striving together with their etiquettes and disciplines. This is the practical dimension of Sufism. If I want to simplify this definition, it would go something like this. That the Urafa's understanding of Tawheed is that Huwal awwalu wal akhiru wal dahiru wal batin. Allah is the first, the last, the outside and the inside. What does that mean? They call this form of Tawheed Samadi Tawheed. Allahu Samad. There's nowhere you can point to. There is no existent that is Allah free. Whatever is a manifestation of Allah's attributes. Nothing is Allah free. Nothing is outside the jurisdiction of Allah. And nothingness doesn't even exist. Whatever is existence. Whatever is a manifestation of Allah's attributes. Theoretical Sufism is attaining to this fact, knowing that Allah is the first, the last, the outside and the inside. And an example, I'm not sure whether I've given it in this assembly, but I've given it once or twice elsewhere, is that when, imagine someone entering a clothes shop. Someone sees the pair of trousers. Someone sees a shirt. Someone sees a pair of gloves. Someone sees a hat. The Sufi sees nothing but thread, because the hat is all thread. The pair of trousers, yes. Although I appreciate the chance of Subhanallah, but you have to, look at it on my side, that the arrogance factor can sometimes get in the way when you praise me like that. And we do have traditions not to praise. So for my sake, if you don't do it, because, yes, I am human after all, yes. But I mean, if you really want to do it, it's okay. But I would prefer you not to. Yes, yes. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The hat is all thread. The pair of trousers, it's all thread. The Sufi doesn't get misguided or sidetracked by the shape of that thread. Whatever is in the shop is thread, but it's in different manifestations and shapes of the thread. Sometimes it's in the form of a pair of trousers, pair of gloves, socks, shirt, and so on and so forth. Everyone sees the clothes, okay, but no one sees the thread. When we see the hat, is it the hat which is beautiful, or is it the thread which is beautiful? The hat has no existence without the thread. When the hat warms the head, is it the hat which is warming the head, or the thread which is warming the head? It's all the thread here. So in theoretical Sufism, it's just knowing, acknowledging that Allah, that pure existence, is awwalu wal akhiru wal dhahiru wal batin. But with practical Irfan and Sufism, it's a matter of now seeing the thread. Still, it's more important now. Because just because you know that whatever is the thread in the shop, whatever is Allah's manifestations, that's not, the goal. The goal is, in addition to knowing, seeing this truth. And seeing and tasting this truth, it's that which has an effect on one's character. Not just knowing it, let alone ignoring the main of Sufism. When will you ever have an opportunity to taste religion when you just put it aside? Okay. So, there's a practical dimension and there's a theoretical dimension to Irfan. Now let's speak about the practical dimension a bit. We'll come to the theoretical dimension, but let's go through this practical and go through a number of verses which the Quran uses here. The Urafa believe that in order to acquire that divine communion, acquiring that unity with Allah, although whatever is in unity with Allah, it's just that we're not aware of it. Here you have to go through a number of steps, number of stations. You have to elevate the spirit. This is something that we have in the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt. Something which is important for us to practice. Being oblivious to this dimension of Islam, it's very difficult. Here, this practical dimension of Irfan, another word they use to describe it is Sayr wa Suluk, which is a form of wayfaring, spiritual wayfaring. And this spiritual wayfaring, this practical dimension of Irfan, has been defined in many different ways. And these are quite important, because there are so many actions in the Sharia whose esoteric inner dimensions want to point you to these meanings. But we just take the letter of the law. And I'll give you one example in relation to wudu in a minute. But this Sayru Suluk has been defined in different ways. It's all one meaning, but it's been defined differently. Some scholars define it as Tawajjuhul Qalb ila al-Haq, the heart's attention and focus towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That entity that Samadi Tawheed, the heart's focus in relation to that. What does that mean? I'll come to it in a minute. خروج من الكثرة إلى الوحدة. Another definition of spiritual wayfaring. Exiting the realm of multiplicity towards the realm of unity. What does that mean? It's the same meaning as توجه القلب إلى الحق. I'll come to that in a minute. Another definition, خروج من المادة إلى المعنى. Exiting the physical realm towards the metaphysical. Now all these three, it's one meaning. And this one meaning I want to give through an example. And then I'll speak about the wudu and how it's related to this. And then I'll give a tradition on wudu, and after understanding this, then you can understand why this tradition of the Ahlul Bayt in relation to wudu is given. Otherwise, before you some of you may have not understood this tradition as it should be understood. When one wants to focus heart-wise towards Allah alone, when one wants to escape from multiplicities towards unity alone, what does this mean? In this world, there are many causes. The car is a cause for you to get from A to B. Food is a cause. Water is a cause for you to satiate your thirst. Medication is a cause. The doctor is a cause. The teacher is a cause. These are all causes that we encounter every day in our lives. In Irfan, they call these causes katharat, multiplicities. That's it. It's not a very complicated thing. These are just terms that different scientists of different sciences, they just play around with these terms. Here, we want to escape from multiplicities. What does this mean? And we want to focus on Allah. What does that mean? But we do this at the same time whilst we're living in this world. Now, with this example, everything will fall into place, inshallah. So someone drinks water, something that we all do every day. What happens usually with people is that they see the water as an independent cause, and they see the water as quenching one's thirst. Whereas in reality, it's Allah who is the quencher of thirst. Because there is only one cause, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That hat in the clothes shop has no independent existence of its own. So when it warms the head, it's not the hat, it's the thread. When you drink water, you have to recall that Allah is the saqi, the quencher of thirst. Now, how many times have you drank water and there was no Allah in the equation when you drank the water? Now, I don't want people to panic. These things, you can't do this in a day. This takes time. This may take years. Even I am a beginner myself. I'm with you, I'm growing. I just want to inform you of these truths. These are important for you to know. It's important to teach your children in a very simple language these truths, for that link with Allah to be made during one's daily routine, every action. Every day there are 10 or 20 actions you do every day. Make the link with Allah. Then you will always be with Allah, with awareness. Allah is as-saqi, the quencher of thirst. But we're drowned in the causes. We're drowned in the multiplicities, the katharat. You go to the grocer's to buy some food. You thank the grocer, and you should thank the grocer too. But you see the grocer as the person who is giving you these foods. when Allah is Ar-Raziq. He's the sustainer of all this. He provides sustenance. But we get drowned in the grocery. And there's no Allah, there's no remembrance of Allah when we go to the grocery to buy fruit, vegetables. You see? That توجه القلب إلى الحق خروج من الكثرة إلى الوحدة. Thank the grocers, there's no problem there, but recall Allah as the real Raziq. You go and put the alarm on your car, for example. There's no Allah once again here. You think that alarm is Al-Hafid, the preserver of the car. These things, it happens subconsciously. We're so drowned in the physical realm. These are now subconscious within our minds. And to take it out from the subconscious, it won't take a week or two. So we put the alarm on. There's no recalling of Allah. And we think it's the alarm system which is protecting the car. But Allah is Al-Hafid. Allah is Shafi. You go to the doctors and they give you a medication, you're cured, and that's very good, and you thank the doctor, you have to have the adab, the etiquette, you have to thank them. But then you get drowned in the doctor. You think the doctor has cured you, but Allah is the curer. Now you just go through your actions, everyone their own actions during the day. There are about 10 or 20 actions you do every day. With each of these actions, make the link with Allah. So every time you drink some water, have food. Why are there du'as? When you want to drink water, there's one door. When you want to eat food, there's another door. Why do you think Allah has assigned these doors? When you're leaving the house, there's another door. From the kitchen to the bedroom, there's a dua for everything in Islam. Now, you don't have to memorize the Arabic. The Arabic is just a conduit for you to recall Allah. You just have to recall Allah. Now, you can do it in English if you want. But there's a reason why. The link has to be made with Allah. Now, whether you're in Iran or in the United States, it doesn't matter. That link with Allah can be made. It's up to you. It doesn't matter that one country is more Islamic than another, or one country is less Islamic than the other. The same thing has to happen in Islamic environments. And actually, in Islamic environments, it can be harder sometimes. Why? Well, this is just a personal understanding of. I was born and bred in England. My son was brought up in Iran. And I've seen children in Iran, the way they've been brought up. Although, on the whole, education in Iran is something incredible. And the education, for example, which I received, you can't compare it to that to which my son. It's much deeper. But I did feel there was one major trap that many fall in Iran. And that's when religion is permeating everywhere in society. It's very easy to get drowned. Whereas somewhere like here, if you just preserve a bit of your fitrah, it's very easy to discern and distinguish between haqq and batil on the streets in this country. But in Iran, sometimes it can be very difficult. You get used to everything. The Quran, du'as, it's on the radio, it's on television. It becomes a habit. Sometimes just regarding these things as a habit, listening to it on the background, you become desensitized to it. It's very difficult to come out of that. Now, this is made much more difficult for children in particular. Whereas you don't have this trap as such here in this country. The only problem in this country, it's very easy for your fitrah to be veiled. But if you can preserve even a bit of your fitrah, you can preserve your deen, inshallah. Anyway, that was just a personal judgment. You have to see Allah in all things. Now in the beginning it's a rational endeavor. It's just a matter of knowing, acknowledging. But with time you will taste these truths. Now in wudu that we do, which is the washing of the face and arms and the wiping of the head and feet, these two washings and wipings, it's the letter of the law and we have to do it with a particular intention. The problem is that we confine it to this physical washing and wiping. And when we just confine it to a physical washing and wiping, then the children ask an important question, and they're right. So what's the need for just washing and wiping when we can just go and have a shower? Now, the answers the adults give, well, if they can't give the answer, they'll give something, try to justify it, using their own logic, and then it won't be accepted by the child, and then all complications arise. It would be good if the adults just say, I don't know. You tell them to go to the scholars. It's a day of email. I am free 2 or 3 hours a day. It's my duty just to go through emails and questions. I do it wholeheartedly. There's no problem. It's part of the job. And even I don't know sometimes. And I have to go to higher scholars, senior scholars. But don't just give an answer which doesn't satisfy them. It stays with them. They're not convinced. And then there's no reason why, a few years down the line, then they don't practice Islam, and then you wonder why they don't practice Islam, because these truths weren't explained to them properly. According to the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt, it's impossible. If the truths are given, people don't accept. Anyway, this wudu, it has a physical side to it in the realm of the Sharia, and it's important. We have to stick to it. But just think someone just washes and wipes for 50, 60, 70 years of their lives, and they haven't understood anything of the esoteric dimensions of wudu. It was just the washing and the wiping. From X to Y, this part of the body to this part of the body. And they've tasted nothing of the inner realities of wudu. That has to be a pity. They've done their fiqhi duty, well done. They may even go to heaven. But they haven't tasted the truths of religion, and that real heaven will never be within their reach. Heaven too will be a recreational thing with recreational, all they're thinking of is the joys that they didn't have here, they want to have there. That kind of a heaven. A heaven which even animals will share with you in those joys. But the wudu has esoteric dimensions to it. Now this has to be understood. This has to be explained in a simple language. Now there are du'as for each component of the wudu. But even for the children, there's no point keep on forcing them to memorize the Arabic of these du'as. There's no point for them to memorize anything when, there is some value in memorizing the Quran. Even if one doesn't understand. Even if one doesn't even read the Quran, just sees the Quran, there's an effect. But we want a major effect. You have to explain to them these meanings. Now this wudu has a lot of esoteric dimensions. Every component of the wudu, be it a mustahab component, with the washing of the hands, inhaling water in the mouth, in the nose, these are mustahab. These even have esoteric dimensions to it. Now, I've spoken about this elsewhere, that I don't want to go through this. It's on the internet. It's about an hour long. People can then go through it later. Imam Khomeini's Adab al-Salat goes through some of them in that book. In relation to wudu, Imam in that Adab al-Salat, he says Ibn Arabi, in one of Ibn Arabi's books, he goes through 150 esoteric dimensions of the wudu. And Imam doesn't mention them in the book. I went through them with an ustad in Rome, and they were incredible. Now, okay, it's difficult. The book itself may be difficult. Even I may not understand it. But that can be explained in an easy language for the common layperson. But just think, a life without this tasting of wudu, it makes a difference. Now, there's one component of the wudu. I just want to explain this one component today, and then we'll continue with the discussions. And that's the washing of the arms from the elbow downwards when we wash it like that. You know, another problem is when you just confine it to the physical realm of the wudu, in many people this leads to obsession. Because it's the only thing they're worried about. This physical thing, and they keep on, they're so nervous, they don't want to miss anything. It becomes the only thing they focus on, that they become obsessed. Waswas comes in. And why shouldn't it come in? It's a natural thing, a natural outcome of just focusing on the physical side is waswas. When there's no Allah anymore, you just look at the water and the hand, you keep on doing that. Then someone comes next to you doing that, and then you go away from them so the water doesn't splash on you, and you get nervous. And this is waswas. It's a satanic illness. If it happens, you have to get out of it quickly. There was a scholar in Isfahan. It's a true story. His son told me. And he was a marja eventually, but not the marjas which are the common names. He was a marja for a province in Isfahan a long time ago. And every time he would do the wudu, he said that he felt that the water would fall on the ground, then come back on himself. And he had waswas here. And he said, this is not correct, I have to do it again. So after a while, in the seminary school that he was in, he went to the first floor of the seminary, on the edge of the floor, and poured the water so that the water will fall down one whole floor on the water, so it won't splash up to him again. So he would, pour the water and do that, so to make sure that the water doesn't splash up. And then when he was doing the wudu, he said, water still splashed onto him. You see what waswas can do, what obsession can do. And this is a true story. He went to the second floor of the seminary school, and he poured the water, because they do it with a jug of water, and he would let the water fall down 2 floors to make sure that it doesn't splash onto him again. And he still felt the splashing onto him. And then he said, his aql, his rationality saved him. He said, by Allah, this is shaitan tricking me. And then he continued. But for some people, they don't make use of their aql, and all sort of complications arise. Anyway, one part of the wudu is the washing of the arms, and it starts with the elbows downwards, or a bit higher than the elbows, just to make sure the whole elbow is covered. And we wash downwards. One of the esoteric dimensions of washing from the elbow downwards, because this elbow is an important joint of the human body. As a result of this important joint, you do many things. This joint is symbolic of a cause. The causes that we see in this world, the water, food, doctor, and so on and so forth. What you're doing, what you should be doing with awareness when you're washing here, is you're saying to Allah, I'm washing myself from all these causes and multiplicities, acknowledging that you are the one cause. Now just think, if someone does that in every wudu for 80 years, that will have a different effect than someone who's just drowned in the water. The effect spiritually has to be different. Now, there's one tradition in relation to wudu, it's Hadith Qudsi. Allah is saying this, but in the words of the Holy Prophet. The Quran, Allah is saying it in Allah's words. But we have traditions where Allah is revealing, but the Holy Prophet is using his own words. The tradition says this, that Man ahdatha wa lam yatawadda faqad jafani. Whoever becomes a muhdis, whoever nullifies one's wudu, for example, going to the lavatory, sleeping, those 4 or 5 things which nullifies one's wudu. We say once you nullify your wudu, you become, in Arabic we say you become a muhdis. A hadas has arisen. Whoever becomes a muhdith, walam yatawadda, and doesn't do the wudu, they have abandoned me, Allah. Now, let me explain the whole tradition before you panic and think that you have to do the wudu every single time you go to the lavatory, for example. وَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ. So someone who becomes muhdis and doesn't do the wudu, they've abandoned Allah. وَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ وَتَوَضَّأَ وَلَمْ يُصَلِّ رَكْعَتَيْنِ فَقَدْ جَفَانِي. Whoever becomes a muhdith but does the wudu, but doesn't execute 2 units of prayer after doing the wudu, فَقَدْ جَفَانِي. Allah is saying, they have abandoned me. Now what this abandoning means too, it's a spiritual state here. It's a spiritual state of ignorance. وَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ وَتَوَضَّأَ وَصَلَّى رَكْعَتَيْنِ. Someone who becomes muhdith, but they do the wudu and they execute the 2 units of prayer. وَلَمْ يَدْعُنِي, but they don't supplicate before me, Allah. فَقَدْ جَفَانِي. They've abandoned me, Allah says. If they don't supplicate after the 2 units of prayer. وَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ. Now this is the important line. One who becomes muhdith. وَتَوَضَّأَ. They do the wudu. وَصَلَّى رَكْعَتَيْنِ. They do the 2 units of prayer. وَدَعَانِي. They supplicate before me, Allah. وَلَمْ أَجِبْهُ. And I, Allah, don't answer their prayers and I don't answer their supplications. فِيمَا سَأَلَنِي مِنْ أَمْرِ دِينِهِ وَدُنْيَا. And I, Allah, if I don't answer their prayers in relation to that which they ask from me in matters of their religion or matters of the dunya, فَقَدْ جَفَوْتُهُ. Allah saying, verily I have abandoned them. وَلَسْتُ بِرَبٍّ جَافٍ. And I am not an abandoning Lord. This is a promise. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. And Allah is not an abandoning Lord. This is a promise here. Now, this tradition is guaranteeing you in whatever matter you want in the dunya or in religion that you want from Allah, Allah will give you. It's a promise. Because Allah is not an abandoning Lord. Now, this spiritual status of you being given what you want from Allah, is the key to be given all this merely washing yourself with water? Or is it doing the wudu with those esoteric dimensions in mind? You have to elevate before Allah gives. It can't be just a simple washing. Even the munafiq can do that. It has to be a wudu attentive to all those esoteric dimensions. And then From wudu to wudu, day after day, you practicing what those esoteric dimensions of the wudu is. Allah will give, definitely. Now, this is something, a tradition from the Ahlul Bayt. It's given for us to practice. Scholars have given this. But there's just one thing one has to note here. That if you want to practice this, don't do it. For example, if you become muhdith, you lose your wudu, let's say 10 times a day, don't practice this 10 times a day. Because you'll burn yourselves out. If you want to burn yourselves out, that's up to you. But once you burn yourselves out, getting back on track is very, very difficult. Even for Salatul Layl, I would never recommend people to do the 11 units from the beginning. 2 units, 1 unit. You'll burn you want to do ibadat with taste. There's a minimum which is wajib, yes. The minimum has to be there. If that minimum wasn't there, everyone would have forgotten Allah. That minimum is a conduit to recall Allah, but it's a minimum. Everything else, you have to do it tastefully. No one's forcing you to do it. If it's not done tastefully, the problem is that it may enhance your ego. Because you're doing these tasteful ibadat, tasteless ibadat rather. There's no taste in them, and then you say, oh, I've done all these ibadat every night for the last year. And that has to enhance one's ego. It's very difficult for it not to. The key is persistency, slowly but surely. There's no rush. Shimr, la'natullah alayh, he did Salatul Layl every night. Yes. He did a munafiq doing Salatul Layl every night. But they were tasteless. Once upon a time, Shem was a true believer. He was a defender of Walaya in the Battle of Siffin. Today, how many of us are defending Walaya? Walaya continues to the very end. This is a very small point. I don't want to keep on diverting. But just this one small. Walaya, Wali, is one of Allah's attributes. And since it's one of Allah's attributes, it continues to the end of time. Rasul, Nabi, these are not attributes of Allah. That's why prophethood has an end. There's no end to Walaya. Today, there has to be a Wali. There has to be one. It's the 12th Imam. During occultation, we have to have a Wali who represents the Imam who is in occultation. Now, who that Wali is, everyone has to differentiate for themselves. This community, very strong, believe in Ayatollah al-Udhma Khamenei as the Wali. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Other people may not accept him as the Wali. They go and find someone else. It's possible. Although I don't think there are many people who claim that Walaya. There may be many people today who are legitimate to be the Wali. In addition to his legitimacy, Ayatollah Khamenei is justified. He has a mandate. It has to be, in addition to legitimacy, they have to be justified too. He has a mandate. There may be others, one in the future. Now everyone does their own research. They may find another Imam, another Wali, who in addition to being legitimate, having all the qualifications, also is justified and they may have a stronger mandate. It's possible. I don't know of any. It's possible. The leader today is the Wali. How many people are defending it? If you don't defend the Wali, if you don't defend Walaya, whoever you expect the Wali to be, you will be, in quotes, Sunni in action. Albeit Shia by name. That was the message of Ghadir. The message was Walaya has to continue because Allah is Wali. Islam always needs an enforcer. It's impossible for Islam to be without an enforcer. The Imam has gone into occultation. Who is the enforcer? This is not a concept which people are scared of the term Wali Faqih. And actually, I give them some right to be scared. Because unfortunately, we have many proponents of Wali Faqih who, forgive me, are acting disgracefully. And this hurts people. It makes them, discard the whole thing when they shouldn't be scared. It's all about Islamic leadership. Islam wants a leader. That's it. You have to find who your leader is at the end of the day. You can't be Wali-less. You can't live a Wali-less life because you won't be different to other denominations. I'm not sure where I got, where I was. Yes. Yes, I can't recall exactly why I went into that. But anyway, yes, these have to be abided by, these esoteric dimensions. The ghusl too, the ghusl which is done in a particular manner, that also has esoteric dimensions. You see, when you adhere to the esoteric dimensions, the inner realities of wudu, you grow spiritually. And the link with Allah grows with it. And Allah gives. You grow higher and higher. Allah gives more and more. So when people ask me, I have this difficulty, I want to do this, I want to do that. And this is one route of action. This kind of doing the wudu, the esoteric dimensions, and doing the 2 units of prayer, wanting from Allah, but you do it once a day. At least for a few months, practice once a day doing this. After a few months, do it twice a day, and then stick with twice a day for a few years. Just don't burn yourselves out. You burn yourselves out, it will be something tasteless. The ghusl also, it's a form of washing. The same question comes, well, we can just go and have a shower. And they're right, if you limit the ghusl just to that physical washing. But the ghusl also has esoteric dimensions. Now, although I don't want to go too much into this, you have to forgive me, but I think it's an important point too. One of the causes which one has to, after this cause being executed, one has to do the ghusl is, one of them is copulation. Because during a few moments in that act, you are totally absorbed in the worldly life, in that climax. And there's no Allah in the picture. And as a result of that total engrossment in other than Allah, here now you have to wash the whole body. Whereas with wudu, it's only parts of the body. And that's one of the reasons behind why all the body has to be washed. Now, with every part of the body which has to be washed, there are meanings there too. But we're oblivious to those meanings. Now, there's a tradition that says whoever executes 40 Friday ghusls, i.e. they execute the ghusl on Fridays for 40 consecutive Fridays. The tradition says that their body, the physical body, will not will not rot away. The body, the physical body will be preserved. Now, why is that? You see, it's important. And now you should know why. Because if you do the ghusl as it should be done, every Friday, after 40 consecutive Fridays, with those esoteric dimensions in mind, when you do the ghusl, your soul will elevate to such a level that even after death, you will have what they say wilayatut takwini on the physical realm of existence. The soul has passed, the person has undergone a physical death, but the soul, albeit in the hereafter, albeit in another realm, an immaterial realm, has control in this realm, namely one's body. That's just one example. That's why the true shuhada, those who truly become shaheed in the irfani sense, not merely a fiqhi shaheed, they provide sustenance for us here. They're in unity with Allah. So you see, these are important. The Sharia, everything is in the Sharia. You just have to dig deep in this Sharia. Don't confine it to the superficial layer. And that's what Sufism tries to explain. I'm not sure how long I've spoken for, but because I wanted to do Zikr Musibat. So shall I do it now? Or? Yes, I don't want to bother people, yes. Okay. Now, here, there's a letter which the second Khalifa wrote to Muawiyah during the time of the second Khalifa. Muawiyah was in a governor somewhere. Although the words of bereavement too, just one marginal point here. These words of bereavement which we recite, here too we fall in another trap. We just look at it as a story which happened a long time ago and we just cry. That too is good, but it's a minimum. All the stories in the maqtals, all the stories in the Quran, it's a story of the soul. It's the story of man. It's what man can be. In Karbala, when it speaks of Qasim doing this, Abbas doing that, Ali Akbar doing this, we too have a Qasimi dimension, an Abbasi dimension, Ali Akbar dimension, Husseini dimension, Zainabi dimension. It's all to tell you, you can be this. But you can also be Shimr. Also, it's the story of man. Don't look at the stories of the Quran as stories of history. That's a minimum again. All these stories of the Quran is a story of the soul. And they're very delicate. We may go through one or two of them, inshallah, later. Now in this story here, with Lady Fatima, alayhi salam, well, this was an incredible thing which happened. Ibn Arabi, in one of his works, he said that every action, every word Lady Fatima did or said was on a par with Allah's will. That's the definition of Ismat. Fatima alayhi salam never said anything outside Allah's will. She never committed any action. It was all on a par with Allah's will. Now things happened which were really bad. Now in this letter, the second Khalifa, after what had happened with Lady Fatima alayhi salam, after the whole event, he wrote a letter to Muawiyah explaining to Muawiyah what had happened. And it's a long letter and I don't have the energy to go through all of it, so every night I'll just read a bit of it. The reference is in Biharul Anwar, which is a Shia reference. However, the same words, the same tone has been found, I've only seen it, but there may be more, in 3 very authoritative Sunni traditions also. The same wording almost has been used. And when I come, I think I'll be coming again here for 5 nights after a few days of break. I'll go through those then also, inshallah. But here, this is one letter which is in Bihar. I'll just go through it here. But have this in mind that whatever is happening here, it's the story of you. That you can be this on this side or you can be that on that side. When Fatima alayhi salam is defending Walaya, How are you defending wilayah today? When people are going against wilayah, when people are fabricating truths against wilayah, then people are fabricating truths against wilayah today. It's just that you have to see where wilayah lies in.